Okay, tailoring. This is the telltale sign of a high quality garment is being able to recognize high quality tailoring. Seams, linings, and other details tell the story of how a garment is made. You have to understand what quality is before you can recognize it. High quality items require extra steps and more time to make and are more expensive. Um, if you're like me and were raised in a basic middle class family, maybe you got your clothing at Sears or J.C. Penney's growing up, you didn't know any of this. And I am not a seamstress. I did teach myself to sew when my kids were little, just enough to make things like Halloween costumes and stuff like that. But this was all new to me when I started selling clothing because I wanted to learn how to recognize high quality from low quality just by looking at it. Now, to maximize your profit on eBay and use your time most efficiently, you have to be able to recognize a high quality garment when you see it. And again, eBay is all about time. Everything you do, every step of this business is about how much you can get done because it is an unlimited business. You could do this for 24 hours a day and still never get finished. So you've got to learn to maximize your time, and part of that is learning to source things quicker. We all have 24 hours in a day. What matters most is how efficiently you use it and not to waste it. So you want to learn to work smarter, not harder, especially when you are sourcing. You need to know which properties distinguish high quality garments from low quality ones and how to recognize these properties when you are out shopping. So, what is quality? And I designed this class for people who just don't know this because I didn't know it. I'm self-taught and I just decided to go learn this. And this isn't something most people know off the bat. If you sew, if your mother sewed, you might know some of this stuff. Or if you were raised in an affluent lifestyle, you might know some of this stuff. But the average person just doesn't know this. So hopefully these tips will help you understand why certain things are more expensive than others. Okay, to cut costs, manufacturers choose to focus on making the garment look good on the hanger instead of quality because that is what sells quickly. All of these fast fashion, I call them, type stores that um, just create so much inventory and have so much stuff. Walmart is an example. Target, their clothing brands are cheap. Um, the clothing is created to look good in the store. It's not necessarily created to look good on a person. And that's what people selling clothing don't understand. Like eBay sellers, they don't they don't know what the fashion industry is doing. Low quality items are made quickly and cheaply, and most of it in factories overseas with very low paid workers that do not have any skill. The amount of low quality items far outweighs the high quality items in the retail market. So, a high quality item is distinguished by things by durability. How long does it last? Um, that's a huge thing with high quality. If it's a good, well-made garment, it's going to last forever. Like the camel hair blazer, the cashmere sweater, it's going to last a really long time. Proper fit. How well does it fit the body? Smooth fabric. Is it comfortable? Does it feel good next to the body? Neat seams. The details, the devil is in the details with finely made clothing, and that's what we're going to learn here. All of these things takes extra time and cost extra money. And one of the reasons they cost extra money is because the skill of the person making it. The higher skilled people demand more money. An Italian tailor is going to demand a lot more money than a factory worker in Japan because their skill and their knowledge is superior. So that's why high quality clothing is much more expensive. So we are going to start with talking about seams and linings. The seam is the line where the pieces of fabric are sewn together. And this is just an example of all kinds of different seams. This could be a whole class just by itself. And this is not something you need to know because you don't need to know these words because you're not going to put this in your titles and you're not going to put this in your description on eBay. So I'm just showing you here that this is a whole nother world of stuff that you probably didn't know. And once you get into researching all this and paying attention to these words, you're going to see there's a lot that goes into making clothing. So don't worry about learning all the names. Just look at how it's made. Look at the quality of the item. So there are some general properties of seams and hems. Is it straight or crooked? Is it a raw or finished edge? Are there any stray threads or loose stitches? Or areas that have been gone back over and stitched over again, so they're stitched on top of each other? And what about the hem allowance? So let's talk about signs of a cheap item, and I'm going to show you some examples here as we go along, and you guys can pass these around. So here is a very poorly made hem. You can see that it's stitched over multiple times here in the middle. They've just gone back over it. It's not straight. It's very crooked. There's loose threads coming off of it. There's no hem allowance, meaning it's just chopped right off here at the edge. And I'll explain what all that means here in a minute. Now this item I actually have for you. You can pass this around, but you can look and see that the hem is just very poorly made. There's places where it's stitched over, and there's gaps where there's no thread at all. And it's not because this is coming apart or it's old, it's because it's just very poorly made. And so when you're looking through the racks of clothing at thrift store and you see something like this, you just pass because you can tell immediately that this was very poorly made. Let me see if there's a tag on here to say where this was made and what country. Nope, I don't see a tag on it. But this feels like something that we made in China. It's just really cheap. Even the fabric feels really cheap, which is another reason I've included this as a sample because it's made of cotton, but it's just very stiff, and I wouldn't want to wear this. It wouldn't feel good. So you can pass that around and look at it. Pinking shears. These have a zigzag blade, and you'll see crafters use these a lot. And it's a cheap way to cut fabric and prevent it from fraying. So anything cut with pinking shears is going to be cheaply made. So when you're looking at the garment that you found and evaluating if it's good enough to resell, if it's cut with pinking shears, it's not going to be high quality. You can just pass on that. So that'll be a time saver there. Okay, serging. That is a type of a machine that it's going to cut the fabric, overcast it, meaning it's going to sew around it, and trims it all in one step. And this is it's done by a special machine, and this is the result of serging right here, is where it's cut right up to the edge. And this is a serger, so it looks different than a regular sewing machine. But it can go all the way to the edge of the fabric, and there may not be a hem at all. So first of all, if it's serged, this is kind of a borderline thing where you don't want to eliminate everything that has a serged edge. Some higher quality clothing will have this, but if it'll be inside where the seam is, it won't be at the hem. When you see this on the hem of a garment, it will be a cheaply made garment. That's for sure because there's no hem allowance. It can be like this on a pressed open seam, like when you look on the inside. Some higher quality clothing will have it like this, so don't look further if you see this as your first sign. But serging is the fastest and cheapest way to sew a garment. It's a shortcut. So when you see this, look further for other clues of if this is a cheap or high quality garment. And this isn't a bad technique, it's just not good for high quality items. It's okay for t-shirts, like underwear, lightweight fabrics, but it does not work well for load bearing seams like shoulder seams or side seams that are under constant tension. This is not a good way to make those types of seams because they're going to rip apart. And you definitely don't want that to happen because you don't want to get a return. You want to sell high quality clothing that's going to last, and so you don't want this. So the idea is to look at the construction and the details of the garment quickly to assess the quality, to see if it's high or low quality. And seams that have gaps or pucker, those are poorly made. And this is something you can test when you are looking at clothing to see. You want to do this test. Find a seam like on the back of a skirt or a shoulder seam and just gently pull the fabric apart. Your hands are perpendicular to the seam, and does it give? Do you see any gaps or threads? If you do, then this is a low quality garment. You don't want that to happen. See, I've got this skirt here. This is called Madewell, and you can find this back seam here, and you pull, nothing happens. It does not move. If you take this skirt made by Walmart, find a seam and you pull it, you can see the threads. You can see the navy blue thread that's behind that. So this is a good test to see if it's high or low quality. Okay, now hem allowance. This is another sign, and this is a sewing term, but don't let that scare you. If there is no hem allowance, then it's a low quality garment. And what is a hem allowance? That is the amount of fabric left at the hem between the cutting line and the hem line. And this is important when you get into alterations. Being a short person all my life, I've always had to have things altered, and so I didn't need a hem allowance. I needed things shorter. But if you're tall, or like you have long legs, or a long torso, and you need to have things altered to be longer, this is very important because you only may need half an inch. But if there's nothing there to alter, then you're not going to buy that garment. There's nothing to work with. So you want enough of a hem allowance to work with. Okay, another thing to look for low quality items, this will be a red flag, is that the plaid does not match up. The patterns don't match up. And you will see this, Burberry fakes are famous for this. This is a Burberry fake that I found online. So you want to look at if it's a patterned item, does the pattern match up? And I'm going to go back to this Madewell skirt here because it's a buffalo plaid. And you can see here at all the seams, there has been great care taken to match it up exactly. Now sometimes the way it's cut, it doesn't it doesn't match exactly, but as we go down here at the lower part where the skirt is fuller, you can see that the plaid is an exact match. And this takes time and this takes care to do it. So when you see something like this here where it's completely mismatched, and we're not talking about Madras plaid, that's a different thing. When you see a complete mismatch like this, that is a red flag that it is low quality. Doesn't mean you can't sell it. It just means it's not Burberry, because this is a telltale sign also for handbags when the patterns don't match up. So look for that. Pattern matchup takes time. So again, here closer you can see in this picture that these patterns aren't matching. And that's just something you may not even know to look for until I've told you now. But low quality brands are going to skip this because your lower quality brands are all about how cheap they can make it, how fast they can make it. And this step takes time. So your crap made in China, your low quality stuff, the patterns are not going to match up. Okay, so this is the end of this segment, and we'll see you back the next video for lining.